By the 1970s, Benjamin Bloom, and that's the easier one to remember, because Benjamin Bloom did Bloom's taxonomy. Benjamin Bloom is the one who found that 50% of a kid's cognitive ability was developed by age 4, 80% by age 8. That's why we have early childhood education. That's why we have kindergarten. Because if you don't get them then, we're missing out. Because that is a period of time when kids' minds are very pliable, very receptive to stuff. If they're ever going to be, that's what it's going to be in there. But anyhow, Benjamin Bloom also was the one who took and developed the concept of mastery teaching, mastery learning. And then, a few years later, a fellow named James Block wrote a full book on mastery teaching, summarizing studies in lower grades, upper grades, reading and math, and everything else you could think of. And what they found was, in reading, the top 3/4 of a class using mastery teaching learned as much as the top 1/4 traditionally does. Now imagine having a class that you've got 3/4 of the class looking like 1/4 does. That's extraordinarily powerful stuff. And that's one of the reasons that that's deeply embedded in everything we do. We're always dealing with mastery teaching. As Sarah Simpson, one of the best teachers I ever worked with, said, I'm going to teach and I want them to learn it, but if they're not going to like it, they're going to have to learn it anyhow. That's a very hard-nosed approach. I want you to like it, but if you're not going to like it, you're still going to have to learn it. That's not an excuse not to learn things in there. So mastery teaching is simply, as its basic element, is simply teaching in such a way that all the kids learn it. Once again, all may not be every single solitary kid in there, but pretty doggone close to it. It's not all but 5 or 6 or 7. It's much closer to, like 1 or 2 or so forth. This particular chart, if you read down this way, shows the traditional procedures. The traditional teacher presents information, assigns the IAs, independent activities. Kids complete them. Either the teacher or the kids check them. Teacher records a grade, and the kids move on without having mastered stuff in there. That's just what a traditional teacher does. Did any of y'all ever go to school with a traditional teacher who did something similar to this?
Oh, yeah.
Gosh, almost all of mine did. They presented the information. They assigned stuff to do. We completed it. Usually we checked it, not the teacher. She recorded grades of some sort, I guess. And then we just moved on. We didn't necessarily learn anything else. If we didn't know what to start with, we didn't get it. That's traditional. Mastery teaching, if a person says, I am a mastery teacher person, if that's my philosophy, and I believe in mastery teaching, teacher presents it, then checks to be sure the kids can do it instructionally, which is what we talked about just before lunch. Can they do it instructionally before they get it independently? And then provide additional help. Like for example, if you all got it, you all didn't, there's more additional teaching for you all in there. Then they get the independent activities, they complete them, they check them, they get additional instruction as needed, they rework the stuff, and they do enough independent stuff so we know the kids have gotten it, not just by accident on this worksheet, but we know they really have gotten it. Teacher records the grades, and of course the kids have learned the stuff. So the point of mastery teaching is not that all the kids get the grade that I was thinking about today. We may not be getting to that point for a couple more days because we have to go back over it and the kids really learn the stuff in there. And that's the essence of what mastery teaching is all about. And we want to be sure the teachers do this so the kids do all this stuff. Once again, you should be thinking about, is there a piece of this that could be missing someplace along the line? Or maybe you got them all. Who knows? And this is a comparison. Rejected procedures. Teacher doesn't check the papers. Did you ever have a teacher who never collected the papers? You just did it. I hope you didn't have that, but there are teachers who do that. Or they collect them only sporadically. And so the question is, which day will they check it? Or, as that teacher that I really liked across the hall, they collected it but rarely returned them. Because if she has a stack this high, she's never going to get to all those papers. By the end of the year, she's going to have several stacks. So she's clearly not returning them in there. Or maybe teacher returns them, but no grades, no comments. One of the things we know from research is that simply having a grade on it doesn't do any good. It's the comments on there, and not the comments of awesome, wonderful, great, happy face. Nothing wrong with those particular things if there are some specifics that should be there. Some of those things I saw last year in the hallway as I would be walking through to certain places I was supposed to observe. I would see all these comments. Every single one of them is stamped with a stamp. Awesome, 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 awesome. It would save the teacher a lot of work right there. But the sad thing was, they were not awesome. They were awful. They were terrible. I tried to sneak some off the wall because I wanted to make copies of them to show people how bad they were, with teachers putting A pluses and all these other things on there, and they were really terrible, terrible documents in there. And I don't mean to use too many terribles because that'll make me sound like a certain presidential candidate in there. Teacher returns papers long after instruction has been provided. Oh, I found these papers from last year. Let me give these back to you, sort of thing. Or they get grades. All they got is a grade. So you made a 46. So what? This kid that I tutor, 11th grader, she gets papers back with 46 or 72 or whatever it happens to be. No marks. 46. Teacher rechecks them, returns them with grades, but doesn't provide any further teaching. If you don't get any further teaching, it was sort of useless in the first place. If I were not going to provide further teaching, why would I ever bother checking the paper? See, it would mean nothing. I check the paper because it's going to guide my further instruction. In the literature, the term is, it informs instruction. That's the buzzwords nowadays. Informs instruction. Teacher provides further teaching, but no incentive to engage in further learning. I want you to do rework for all this stuff, but you're still going to have a 0. Or something else. And then, of course, the X marks we've already talked about. On the other hand, mastery teaching collects almost all the papers. Notice I said almost because you can't collect every single solitary paper. Collects papers, usually returns them on the next school day, returns them with comments. That, according to research, is the key piece. It's returned with comments. And this is a good beginning sentence. Had you thought about doing blah, blah, or whatever the need happens to be with all this stuff. Teacher rechecks, returns them without grades, provides further teaching, and finally, they use the check marks, and the kids learn the stuff. And that's sort of the sum and total of all the mastery teaching stuff. Kulik and Kulik are researchers well known in the field of reading. We recently reviewed, I'll leave out the word, it's a collection of studies on the same subject. Who was here this morning and remembers the term collection of studies all on the same subject is considered good research stuff.
Meta-analysis.
Meta-analysis. We recently reviewed meta-analysis of nearly 40 different areas of educational research. So that's 40 different areas of research. Few educational treatments of any sort were consistently associated with achievement as large as those produced by mastery learning. So we talk about all these different ways of dealing with things. Mastery learning is that. Students in mastery learning classes, quote, consistently have been shown to learn better, reach higher levels of achievement, develop greater confidence in themselves as learners. Not particularly bad for that aspect. Now, these are for at-risk kids. Oh, I thought maybe Shelley was doing something with this. Okay. The curriculum refers to either diagnostic prescriptive, that is, we identify what the needs are beforehand, we diagnose and prescribe, and that's considered appropriate. Inappropriate is grade level for everybody. And then instruction stuff is mastery teaching, which is considered appropriate, traditional, inappropriate. Now you can see about progress. How do you get the highest gains of achievement with kids? Now I'm checking to see who interprets charts.
Mastery teaching on appropriate level.
Right. In there. And I would repeat that, except we're not supposed to be repeating what kids say, because that discourages other people from listening. So I didn't repeat it. How do we get, if we're really trying to get the least progress with these kids, what should we do?
Inappropriate.
Okay? So you see, if we have the inappropriates for both of them, then we get the least gains in there. So what does that say to us?
That we're doing it right.
Yeah, we're doing it the way we're supposed to be doing, because this is what we are aiming toward. We're trying to use good strategies, which is mastery teaching stuff, and appropriate materials in there. And of course, if we ever reverted to something else, and I'm thinking of a particular school whose principal is a close friend of mine, personal and professional, and her school grade last year, or 4 years ago, was A. The following year it was a B. The following year it was a C. Last year it was a D. And when the superintendent came to the school and said, your school has been going down, 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 and she said, yes, it's ever since you made us quit doing what we were doing. It's sort of nervy to tell the superintendent that. But good for her, because that school was the second best school I had. It was only a little bit behind where you all were. But when they were no longer allowed to, that's basically what happened. They couldn't use mastery teaching, because you can't use mastery teaching if you have wrong books. Nobody can say, oh, we're going to stimulate their thinking, we're going to expand their horizons, and we're going to do all these things, and we'll use mastery teaching with it, as one school currently is trying to do. But you can't do that. Mastery, it comes as a package, right materials and right kinds of instruction in there. And so that's what mastery teaching deals with. Okay, number 8. Nancy needs a break, so we're taking a